I pitched this idea about, okay, what about your car is charging everywhere you go? Like, I'm sitting in class in Berkeley, my car is charging, my car is charging, but it is parked overnight. Then I don't need to make this separate trip I'm making to an EV charging station. It could be much easier, I thought. So that's where it kind of started the inception of the idea of inductive robotics.
Right. As most good ideas do come from that kind of annoyance. You find a problem in your own life, and it's like,
exactly.
I gotta fix this.
Yeah, something like that. And I mean, it was nothing close to what we are doing now, but that's the beauty of it, is that you start with something. I said, okay, I did this degree, now might as well try this and see where it goes. Worst case, I can get a job, I thought.
Welcome to Manufacturing Insiders. I have an exciting guest with me today, Madhav Ayyagari. He is he's a seasoned professional in the engineering space. He has invented a pretty innovative and very interesting product. I'll let him talk about this, but we're really talking about the future of EV charging here. And very interested to get your take on where you see that industry going, where you see your product kind of fitting into it. And also, I'm interested to pick your brain. We're all kind of talking about geopolitics right now. Just kind of interested to get your take on the U.S.'s relationship with India, China, et cetera, and what your thoughts are there. So welcome to the podcast, Madhav.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Great to meet you. I can do a quick intro if that helps the audience, and I can then get into the questions you asked me. So my name is Madhav. I originally from India, but moved to the US in 2013 to get a master's at University of Florida, followed by working in a combination of startups and big companies, mainly in the warehouse, the automation space.
Yep.
So I worked for this startup called Redworks in Austin, where we help big retailers and companies like Starbucks, Sephora, Empty Runway, Walmart move from manual pick, pack, sortation to fully automated warehouses. Imagine people picking with paper, now picking with our RFID guns, moving in a warehouse and maximizing efficiency. So this was the time when Amazon was expanding really quickly in the US in terms of warehouses and its presence, and everyone else wanted to catch up or was trying to catch up with them. So as a result of that, they were increasing their warehouse productivity and automation, and that's where we went in. I really enjoyed that job, and also kind of realized how much I liked working with end users and kind of training them and doing a combination of deploying and testing and actually training end users on the job. Yep. I then got into gaming, and this came about through one of my side projects. I think this was a time when we were in one of those VR hype cycles. Like back then, it seemed the hype. I think it died down. It came back again.
Right. But yeah. It was real big. Like for you would go over to a friend's house and they have a VR headset on. But it just kind of died off.
It died off. And I mean, but Oculus came back with it. But Google had this $15 cardboard things you could buy. It was just very cheap. So I bought one and I took this Udemy course. Maybe it was Udemy, but nano degree on VR. And I just loved kind of developing something which I could see and feel and see immediate results. So I developed a basic game as part of the course, and I really loved gaming at that point. I thought this was very interesting. I played a lot of games growing up, Counter-Strike, Call of Duty, all of that first-person shooter games, but the learning more about gaming and making them was really fun. And somehow I started working with this gaming company in Austin called SciPlay, then followed by another 5 years in gaming, where mainly I started working on consumer games, this direct to consumer games, mobile apps, and was very successful in kind of growing games, which just started, to many millions of users and also growing revenue as part of the equation, and kind of fully understood how the ad market works. How what is consumer acquisition cost, what is consumer LTV, and stuff like that. That was a whole new world I really liked. But after 5 years of it, I really wanted to try something else, and I got an MBA at Berkeley Haas School of Business in California, and I kind of used that time as, okay, this is, I always wanted to kind of maybe have something on my own, build a new company, etc., but just didn't have the knowledge or kind of support structure in terms of how to do it, because you have to start somewhere, right?
Right.
So I just didn't know, and but MBA kind of helped me give the structure. As part of a class called entrepreneurship, I pitched this idea of mobile EV charging,
Hmm.
where this was going back to, I used to have a Model Y living in an apartment where I didn't have access to EV charging, and I was trying to figure out why. And then, yeah, I pitched this idea about, okay, what about your car is charging everywhere you go? Like, I'm sitting in class in Berkeley, my car is charging, my car is charging, but it is parked overnight. Then I don't need to make this separate trip I'm making to an EV charging station. It could be much easier, I thought. So that's where it kind of started, the inception of the idea of inductive robotics.
Right.
Yeah, I
As
mean,
most good ideas do come from that kind of annoyance. You find a problem in your
yeah,
own life, and it's like, yeah,
exactly.
I gotta fix this.
Yeah, something like that. And yeah, I mean, it was nothing close to what we are doing now, but that's the beauty of it, is that you start with something. Yeah, I said, okay, I did this degree now, might as well try this and see where it goes. Worst case, I can, get a job, I thought. And yeah, that's what happened. I stuck with it, and I found my co-founder Dave, who has 10 years of experience in robotics and automation from Amazon, and
Okay.
he was also at the time kind of looking for something to do in the climate space. He had
Hmm.
just taken a year off after Amazon and was just exploring new ideas, and happened to meet him through this interesting forum called Work on Climate. And then, yeah, we really hit it off, and they thought, okay, there's this interesting idea about mobile robots, or like just mobile EV charging. And then we thought, okay, robotics is a place where we can take existing tech and build something. It was very funny. We started with something like Roomba style robots, which
Right.
would go under a car and charge the car. But and then, yeah, I mean, we scaled back from that, thinking, okay, like the car needs to have a receiver, it needs to be able to kind of take the charge, and also imagine maybe 20 robots scuttling around in a parking lot. Sounds very dystopian
Right.
and scary too. Like, okay,
Yeah.
but yeah, then we started with the germ of an idea, but eventually we built a fully autonomous EV charging robot, which is a prototype now. But essentially, what we did was we showed that you can park your car anywhere in the parking lot, plug in our adapter, and then that adapter kind of tells us where the car is. The robot drives up to the car autonomously, because plugging in the adapter gives its signal that
I see. I
this
see.
car
I
is
see.
needing a charge, and
Is
yeah,
there
it
another
just goes there.
function? Forgive me for my ignorance here, but I'm not really I guess up to date on my EV knowledge.
Yeah,
I have a gasoline powered
yeah,
Chevy Silverado. So what? How do they typically charge? I mean, is there a
yeah,
reason you're charging them differently
yeah,
that you need this adapter?
yeah. That's it. Yeah, it's a good segue into the problem, in the sense that our solution is one among many solutions, I would say, and it is very narrow and specific to a very particular scenario. So typically, there's like three ways to charge. I would say, like, the charging market is split into, I guess, like three broad. One is at-home charging.
Yep.
So people who have a single family home, you go home and you charge. So this is called level one charging. It
Okay.
charges at a very low rate, like I think 6 kilowatts. Uh, and then yeah, you just leave your car charged overnight, and by the time you wake up, you would have had like a close to a full kind of charge, right? So
Okay.
this works for most use cases, like you just go to work and come back. Now there's this other big group of people who live in multifamily, right? So they may have access to EV charging more so slowly, like apartments are adding those, but again, not everyone has it. And if you have them too, it's a challenge to kind of find a spot when you have time, right? Maybe there's a car already there. So those people charge maybe at work,
Okay.
or they charge at like a fast charger, or like a charger made available to the public use by the government or other kind of programs. So
Okay.
they go to a mall, they charge, they go to a fast charger, and the fast chargers are mainly started by Tesla, and
Right.
uh, and then yeah, there are many other companies like ChargePoint, etc. But you have these two extreme ends of the market: at home, slow charging, and fast charging. Fast charging is level three, which is like high speed. In
Right.
half hour to 45 minutes, you get a full charge, and in middle is like level two charging, is
Yep.
like slightly
Those are going to
faster.
be kind of few and far between.
Yeah,
The
so
the
they're
Tesla
becoming,
charging stations, you're not going to have those everywhere, right?
yeah, they're trying to. There's an effort to get them everywhere, but again, yeah, that comes back to, the problem we are trying to solve is that we we try to kind of figure out where there is a gap in the market,
Hmm.
or like where EV charging doesn't work. And what we saw was at home charging works fine. Like it's just very easy. I mean, if you have a home, you just pay a few, maybe $1,000 or maybe two, to have an electrician come in and do a basic setup, and that's it. You just have like a 240-volt plug. It's
Okay,
very
you need
simple, charge your
240.
car.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you could still do with 122. It just takes very long. Just takes very,
Right.
very long.
Right.
Then the challenge then comes, the challenge comes when you're at a workplace, when you're at a commercial parking lot or a hotel, like who takes up the cost of installing these chargers, right?
Right.
So if you're like a company who you typically take on the cost. And but in our case, what we learned was in commercial parking, what we saw was it's very expensive to get these chargers installed. The cost is coming down, like maybe $3,000 to $4,000 to $5,000 to do one charger, but it
Okay.
varies quite a bit depending on structure. Like in most of the parking lots we work in, they're quite old. Infrastructure was put in back in the 60s, and it's very expensive to put in these chargers, almost like as much like it costs 10K to put in one set of chargers. And when we looked into the quotes, it looked like the actual hardware is just a small portion of it. The rest of it is just like installing,
The
electrician,
pads, the concrete,
digging,
all
yeah,
that kind of stuff.
digging
Yep.
up everything and adding more energy for it. So that's where we saw that, okay, there's this commercial parking operator who doesn't own the building. He has
Okay.
a real estate owner, and now he has to convince this real estate owner to take up this cost, right?
Mm.
Because he's seeing demand from the consumer that they want charging, and he sees that as an opportunity to add more revenue. But that's a big, like maybe often like 60 to 100K kind of capex project, which they don't want to take on, right?
Right.
Because they are just operating a lease on the real estate kind of parking lot, and their goal is to make as much money as possible in that. Why would they spend a ton of money? So when it goes to a real estate owner, they just look at it as a pure kind of ROI kind of equation. And what we've seen is initially, like maybe 2016 to 20 or 21, they've put in a lot of money in these EV charging setups, but they haven't quite seen the ROI on them, right?
Hmm.
Like, so they've put in a ton of money, but actual usage, like they haven't seen a lot of success, because you often have like two charging stations for a big building, and you have a car kind of sitting there for most of the time, right? There's no efficient way of cars coming in, cars going out.
Right.
and which kind of increases more cars, more revenue. So what ends up happening is there's a stalemate where parking operators want to install EV charging. The real estate owners don't want to fund it. And as a result, like there's no charging. And this happens across industries, like in multifamily commercial parking. So what we are trying to do is, can we break this link between a parking spot and a charging station, wherein you're not tied to parking at a specific place. You just park anywhere you can,
Right.
and we can give you EV charging, but we will do it at a much lower cost. And the
Mm,
reason we are saying we'll do it at a much lower cost is that we'll do all the setup, the setting up the charging and everything. You just pay as a monthly subscription for using our solution, right?
I see. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah. So
Huge
you
advantage.
so you don't have the capex kind of sink you have to take traditionally in, and on top of that, as opposed to just charging 2 cars a day, maybe three, you get to charge maybe 10 or 11, because the cars can be anywhere and the robot goes from car to car to car. uh,
In
yeah,
the property manager here or owner is making money from each charge. So they're paying you a subscription fee, but they're gaining revenue as well while they're charging vehicles, right?
right, yeah. So there's two models typically, like either either you take a revenue share from the revenue from the customer,
Mm-hmm.
or you pay like a downright just like subscription cost. I think for us, we what at least now what we're thinking is that, yeah, just pay us the monthly subscription cost and you keep all the revenue from the customer,
Right.
because you know how to best charge your customers, and we want you to have the upside.
Right.
And I
Yeah, and
and then
plus it becomes
yeah,
a lot more difficult. You're gonna have to track how much usage they have,
right,
and you
right,
know the accountability issue. Yeah, that makes
exactly,
sense.
yeah. But yeah, that's a whole kind of like, maybe in a nutshell, kind of the landscape of EV charging.
So what does it
Yeah,
cost? So what's the comparative cost for you? Like, so let's say, you were to put in a charging station, that's fixed, right?
right.
Um, I don't know what the average number of stations is if somebody puts in an installation, like 4, 5, 10. Like what would that normally be?
Yeah, so uh, charging stations are typically put in sets of two. So you have two
Okay.
or four, except
Okay.
some, or like six, things like that.
Okay.
And in terms of like, when you kind of compare a traditional kind of charging installation to kind of what we would do, so to speak. So if you put in a traditional kind of charging station, it would cost you somewhere between like, for like two like maybe one charging station with two ports, or let's take like four kind of charger installation, right? So you have two stations where there are like four charging ports.
Okay.
uh, what will happen is, like, you're looking at something like close to 50K to like somewhere around like 100K in terms of the overall installation cost. And
Mm-hmm.
assuming you go on the lower end, like you look at like something like maybe 50K to install these chargers.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so you put in all of this initial capex to do the whole install, and then followed by, there is some maintenance cost every month. Like you pay the company some maintenance cost. And
Gotcha.
then at the end of the day, you maybe charge the customer like maybe 20 cents a kilowatt hour. So you hardly make any revenue in this model. You
Right.
just like, you've spent like maybe 60 to 100K on the charging station, and you make very little revenue from the customer.
Right.
When you contrast that with like our model, what we are saying is that you pay us like $995 per robot per month. And then, like, let's say we deploy like a 4 robot system that costs you close to like 4,000 a month, maybe less depending on the configuration.
Right.
And not on and with this, you get a capability where you get to charge 20 to 30 EVs every day. as opposed to just 4 or 6 you would charge traditionally.
Right. Yeah,
So
it makes a ton of sense. So they have lower operating costs, they have lower upfront costs, they can charge more vehicles. Is there any downside?
yeah, I mean, sure, like there's always a downside. It's like the downside is that we need to do a really good job maintaining the infrastructure, right? Like at the end of the day, it's a robotics solution which needs to be up and running all the time.
Right.
So it's the downside would be like when the system is down and it's not an easy fix because
Right.
it's a complex operation. And the other kind of uh, maybe I guess like some people argue it as a downside. I would say more like an inconvenience is you have to plug in the adapter each time. But I think like that's a very common behavior. Anyway, you are plugging in a wire into your car and as it's same like that. You just plug in an adapter and then by the time you come back, your car would have been charged.
So why can't it use the same connection as the traditional charger?
It actually does like it uses the same connection. It's just that the adapter we created is built for like two sets of standards. One is the NACS standard, which is used by Tesla, where it's the same plug which goes into the car. It's just that the other side of it is fitted to our robot. That's it.
I
So
see.
the other side of it is like the interface to the robot. The side which plugs into the car is same as the your existing kind of
I see.
charging plug which goes into.
So do different models of EVs have different connections? Is that
Mainly there's the two standards which are coalescing at this point, like the Tesla standard and maybe like a non-Tesla standard, like CCS, CHAdeMO, and NACS are two big standards. So
Mhm.
what more and more you're seeing like companies like Ford, GM moving to the Tesla standard. So I think there'll just be one in the future,
Right.
hopefully. But right now you have two. So what we did is we just built our adapters for like both standards. So depending on the car, you can pick either one.
I see.
Yeah.
So I've been watching the EV adoption kind of play out, and it seems to really be skyrocketing from what I've seen of late. And I actually had a friend who bought Tesla, and I was kind of surprised. He didn't really seem like the kind of person that would buy a Tesla. And he's like, "Well, you should see all of the incentives they have to buy these. There's tax credits, there's money off. I mean, it actually turned out to be a pretty reasonable price, and they're pretty cool. Um, and then there's places where you can charge it for free for slow charging, and in some cases there's very few of these places, but evidently there are places where you can charge it for free, so you can end up spending less on fuel costs. um, I guess I'm curious from your perspective, because arguably the big reasoning behind electric vehicles is that it's somehow more environmentally friendly, right? However, you're using fossil fuels to create the electricity to power the vehicle. You're using a lot of rare earth metals to build the batteries, etc. um I'm just kind of curious from your perspective, like, do you feel like EVs accomplish the goal of a more green solution, a more environmentally friendly solution? And two, when there are less incentives from the government to buy EVs, less subsidies, do you think that the curve will remain the same, the adoption curve?
Yeah. Yeah. I think two good questions. I think overall, like net, like the having, I mean, I wouldn't say like you having an EV will kind of you can say like, oh, I'm saving the environment. I don't, I guess like that's a hard argument. But in general, the more EVs you have, like, the more kind of tailpipe emissions you cut down because like 20% of all I think greenhouse gas emissions come from like general kind of cars and other vehicles on the road. So it is a big contributor. But again, I think what what you see end up happening is like this is just like the first wave of electrification. Slowly, you will have like these electric vehicles moving to semis,
Hmm.
trucks, boats. So mainly, you have a lot of other areas too where you have a lot of emissions coming from, which will eventually be cut down when you have EVs. But
Mm.
having said all of this, at the end of the day, it has to be a great consumer product, which is what Tesla has done, which no one else had done until that point.
Hmm.
So you might be inclined to buy an EV if it makes you feel better, but at the end of the day, you just keep it because you like the car. I think
Hmm.
that is what a lot of Tesla owners say. Like I used to have a Model Y. I sold it because again, I had a charging problem where I used to live in Berkeley, all of this charging issues, and I drove twice from Austin to Bay Area and back. And then you pass through like deserts of both literal and EV charging deserts where you're always anxious that your car might die and you're
Right.
left stranded. So
Right.
that was like a reason for me it didn't work. And we just had one car between I and my wife. So like it should be gasoline and maybe my next car will be EV. So I think the going back to the question of like will will the is having an EV kind of like overall helps with reducing greenhouse gas emissions? Yes, but again, the other point might also be true. Like net, like all the all the uh, all the raw materials which go into it, like the lithium processing and the supply chain, might be more kind of less carbon efficient than the car itself. So that's very hard to say, right?
Right.
But at the end, but what I see is that even though with the administration change, like the reduced incentives, EV adoption is still continuing to rise. So this tells me like a few things. One is if it's a really good product and people are loving it, they'll continue to buy it, and you're kind of, I guess, um, like how do you put it? Your how you come at it might be different. Some might come at it from like this environmental angle, like I want to feel better about what I'm buying. Others might just like the car and it's a cool
Right.
car. So
Right.
that's how I feel about it overall. And again, I think going back to the whole kind of greenhouse thing and everything, I think ultimately there won't be a world where like US won't trend the same way like a Norway or another European country trends. I think
Hmm.
like Norway in 2003 to maybe 2013, they had like a crazy shift in terms of EVs. The US won't happen because
Right.
I have a gas car. I'm in Texas, Austin. Like everyone
Yeah.
has, a lot of people have gas cars here. We
Hmm.
will continue to have gas cars, and there'll be cases where like we need gasoline and we need all of these different energy sources. I just think of it as like another energy source, right?
Hmm.
So your car is electric, but the electricity that powers your car can come from many cases.
Right.
It could be renewable, it could be coal, it could be natural gas,
Right.
multiple. Right? So it just gives you more optionality and a better technology, and they're also more safe, presumably. So
Right.
yeah,
So, you grew up in India and you got your undergrad degree there.
yeah,
Tell me how growing up in India influenced, kind of your decision making, your decision to get into this sort of a space. You just tell me a little bit about that.
sure. So I grew up in the city called Hyderabad, and it's in southern part of India, and it's like a big tech city now, but I think it's very interesting. I was watching this earlier. Everything changed for where I grew up for my city when our then kind of chief minister of the state, like think of it like the governor here or the senator, maybe yeah, like I think the governor is a better. He got a he got a 5 minute meeting with Bill Gates,
Okay.
and yeah, he got a 5 minute meeting with Bill Gates, and I think this is when also Bill Clinton had come down to India, and he made a stop in Hyderabad. So back then there was like hardly anything in a sense, like hardly any tech sector. There was a little bit like outsourcing, the business cross outsourcing, but not to the extent. So he, the chief minister, he kind of showed a PowerPoint presentation of how you could get a driver's license very quickly to Bill Gates. And Bill Gates was apparently very impressed how he used his own product, PowerPoint, Microsoft PowerPoint, and this is tech forward kind of guy. And they then committed to investing and built the biggest development center outside the US in Hyderabad for Microsoft.
Wow.
Yeah, so that kind of changed things. And yeah, once Microsoft came, everyone else came in. And yeah, there was a boom in kind of IT, and you had all of this big Indian companies like Infosys, Tata, and all of this, and then now many product companies too. So all of the major tech companies have a presence in Hyderabad and Bangalore, which are the two big tech cities. So I grew up in this context, and again in India, like what you, I think it here people have like a lot more options in terms of what to study, geography, I guess, social sciences, whatnot. There it is, I don't know for good or bad, it was just two options. You either become an engineer or a doctor,
Yep.
because that's where the jobs are, right? Like that's how you get a job. And I mean, now I guess there are more, but yeah, I chose engineering because I was more inclined that way. And yeah, my elder brother was already working as a software engineer. And for us, like my my dad and mom, they were like more in a traditional. My dad was a journalist, my mom a lot, but this information technology or IT represented a way to a better life essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So like you see how, like I saw how my brother, if you study hard and you get a good job, you can make a great life, right? And so it just kind of showed that promise, and all of these like companies coming there and kind of giving us this opportunity made me kind of more inclined to try that and then work hard and do that. So that's how I started my career. And I worked in India for a few years. And again, I'm very in general like curious, and I get bored very easily. So at the end of 3 years, I was like, yeah, I want to do something else. And in Hyderabad, like, we have this very interesting connection where you always have a cousin or someone who lives in the US.
Okay.
So there's
Yeah.
so many people from Hyderabad who've gone to the US. You also you have some kind of extended relative who lives there. And in my case, my uncle lived there, and I just asked him like, hey, I'm interested. And he's like, yeah, you should come here, get a master's degree, and it opens up a lot more options, which is
Yep.
what I did. Yeah. But essentially, like it it was a good place to grow up, but I grew up in this tech boom kind of sector where yeah, you could build stuff, you could build technology, and it could lead to a great life.
What observations do you have having gone to school in India and then
Yeah.
having gone to school in the US? Like what observations do you have about maybe the differences in how education is approached from a student perspective or from a teaching perspective? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think like it's an interesting question because I think in India the education system is extremely goal focused. Like from day one, like it's an insane level of meritocracy, or like you have to you have to beat the race to kind of go somewhere.
Right.
Else there are like a billion other students who want that opportunity, right?
Right. Right.
So that's instilled in you from day one, like, and the entire education system is built around that. It's more like extremely based on like getting a job and getting a good job and having education around things which are employable, you know.
Right.
So
Which
that's
makes so much sense. I mean, it frustrates the crap out of me. I see so many kids go to school here in the U.S. and end up with this huge load of debt, and it's like, well, what did you go to school for? Oh, psychology. It's like, what did you expect to get out of that? Like, what 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 are you gonna do now? You know, now you got this debt, and you don't have a career. But I mean, yeah, I mean that makes so much sense in India, where as you said in our previous conversation, the opportunity is just not as uh, there's not as much opportunity.
yeah, yeah.
You
It,
have to be very, very focused and very goal oriented. Whereas here, it's almost like people just kind of feel, it'll work out one way or another.
I think it's a double-edged sword. I would say, like, I think one, yeah, yeah, there's an insane amount of like competition, and it's drilled down in you from very young age that you have to beat this competition to get out and get a good job. And then like the other side of it, like in the US, is that you have really, really good universities that do like really good research and do like groundbreaking stuff, right? So again, like there are merits to that, but I think what I've observed is that students or like people or kids who grow up here, they're a lot more like independent minded, and they express like they get to I guess like maybe taste freedom at a such younger age that they are they want to do whatever they want, I guess, right? Sometimes it results in great things, like like
Hmm.
a Bill Gates or a Steve Jobs who found these iconic companies. Or the other end of it is, yeah, I studied something where there is no market, and now I have this lot of debt. So I think like there are like really good plus points, because at the end of the day, every major tech company is from the US. All the big inventions happen here, and that's why everyone wants to come here. That's why I came here. But you also have this other side of it where you could get lost into, yeah, to your point, like taking a degree where at the end of it you might not have much thing, but now you have a big load of debt to go through,
Hmm.
and you have to, I guess, like, do like a regular blue collar job, which is not bad, but you didn't have to pay so much to go to college if that's what you wanted to do.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So basically, in the US, there's a lot more, kind of do what I want, which does lead to more entrepreneurship and
yeah,
more kind of independent research and new product development, which is, you're into. Um, but there, it's like you have to be focused. This is the way, these are the steps that you're going to take to get a good career. You follow the rules and it's going to work out. So yeah, that does kind of make sense. And honestly, like I've worked with a number of Indians over the years being in the marketing and website space. And the one thing I noticed, this is not a negative or a positive observation, but one thing I noticed is that with a US designer, you can say, hey, I want something like this. I don't want it to look like this exactly. I want you to kind of use your creative flexibility and make it something unique. When you tell that to an Indian designer, you're going to get an exact duplicate of what you
right,
what you
yeah,
showed them.
yeah. I think that speaks a lot, right, to kind of how we are brought up the education system again, because going back to how it's set up is like it's just very like rule based. You have to do this to do, you have to do X to get Y. And then what you get out of this is much lower kind of creativity slash kind of, or like more rule following, right? Like I think you see that clearly in the culture too, like having worked there and here, like there, like, yeah, you're being told to do something and you do something. And in a way, that's kind of also true in other Asian cultures. So it comes
Mhm.
more from a cultural kind of standpoint growing up. But here, yeah, you have the ability to speak back, and you maybe suggest something else and you do this. So yeah, you're right. Exactly. Uh,
Yeah,
it's a result of how people are brought up, the culture they grow up in, and the education system. Yeah, in both places.
that's that. Yeah, that's really interesting. So, the one last thing I wanted to chat about was I think it's really interesting and impressive that you were able to take. I'm always impressed with anyone who's able to take an idea and turn it into something and
Yeah,
be making like concrete steps towards that goal. Because I think there's a lot of people out there that have great ideas and they never do anything with them. So, how do you move from the idea of I want to do robotic EV charging, and here's a basic concept, to uh, getting the money for prototyping, and then eventually taking it to market, which I think you're still kind of in that last phase.
yeah,
Like, how do you go through that process?
yeah. I think that the answer is different for hardware and software companies, but at the core of it, ideas don't, I mean, they mean something, but they don't mean anything until you execute on them, right?
Right.
they live in your head rent free, and
Right.
you can chew on them, and you can imagine great things, but you need to manifest them into reality. So I think we are very, I think at least like yeah, we're very lucky to be in an age where if it's a pure software product, you have the ability to learn some. I mean, one, you might, let's say you are a programmer already. That's already like a step up from everyone else. I think this comes back to what you pick in school, right? I think right now, this like to be a programmer is a great thing because essentially that's one of the realities we live in, like virtual like software, right? So if you
Right.
can build something and conjure up something, that's great. So if you're in a software industry and if you have an idea, the best next thing to do is kind of figure out like what is a problem you're solving immediately. Like in like, let's say in our let's say and just I'll just take a quick example. Like you want to build a budgeting app. Let's say you have that idea. So the next question would be asked. You need to be asking is for like who needs this budgeting app,
Right.
right? Because someone has to pay for it at the end of the day. And then the first thing you need to do is like kind of talk to those people.
Hmm.
So like let's say you have the you yourself have the need, so you just build it for what you want to do. If someone else has the need for it, talk to them. So I think a good rule is to maybe I think there's this program called NSF called ICORP, National Science Foundation. They ask you to talk to at least 100 people
Okay.
before you validate that there is something like a real need,
I was
right?
going to ask you that. I didn't know there was going to be a number, but I'm glad you said
Yeah,
that.
I mean, they just have this program around it, but in general, like the more the better, right? Because I mean, if you ask your immediate family, they'll be nice to you. They'll say
Right.
good things. You need
Yep.
to ask like a real person. So once you have validated this idea that someone needs something, yeah, the next best thing is to build it exactly for that specific need.
Hmm.
And few ways to go about it. One is, yeah, if you yourself are a programmer, you build it by doing some learning, or there are many places where like you could hire contractors to kind of build something quick and quick and useful. I mean, the earlier word was quick and dirty, but now the bar has raised. Like it needs to be a good solution, right? So you build something and you put it in front of those people, and what do you think? So they'll give you some feedback, and you keep repeating this loop over and
Hmm.
over again until you find something that's worth paying for. So that's why broadly software,
Yeah,
I would say.
I have a kind of a follow up question to that part. Um, so in terms of like talking to those 100 people,
Yeah.
I don't think the right question is like, would you use this?
No.
I don't think that's a strong. I don't think you get a strong enough answer because they're like, oh yeah, sure, I'd use it. Whatever. Like, how do you ask the right question of that
Yeah.
audience?
Yeah. I think it's more about learning from what they're telling as opposed to, like, I think it's more about asking open-ended questions as opposed to asking like a yes or no question, right? You want
Mm,
to first very clearly understand what is the pain point they have. So within budgeting apps, it could be something like, yeah, like I already use budgeting apps, but I find it really hard to have this decision point whenever I spend my credit card, right? Like, oh,
hmm.
I don't know, like if it happens after the fact. That's a problem I have, right? Like, I created this beautiful budget, but it's very easy to swipe my credit card, and that budget has gone down the drain. So it has to be very very specific things you're looking for, like so you have to listen to their journey of how they go through the process and where in that specific area do they have this pain point, and then the question is would they then pay for it, right?
Right.
Would they pay someone to solve this problem for them? So there are many things which are like it's a simple annoyance, you just get around it, to other things you'll be like, okay, I'd pay for someone to do this.
Right.
So I think, yeah, so asking kind of more open-ended questions of, okay, tell me how you use the regular budget app you use, and then talk me through as you're using it, what are the challenges you face. So
Hmm.
that's one way you kind of learn about problems. So this is like the consumer side of it. Then you have like the other B2B side of it too, where you have to talk to maybe an actual company who's facing the problem. But yeah, overall, like this is software, easy to like bring up something and manifest it and share. But in hardware, I think where we are, the big challenge is you need money.
Right.
You need money. So either you're rich, which I'm not, or you have other sources of income, which you try and do a hobby and it works, maybe it doesn't. In our case, what we did was we went through an accelerator by this really good VC firm called Antler, and they run like a accelerator in Austin, New York, and Boulder, I think. So it happens like, sorry, this is fly going around. It likes my face, but anyway, yeah. So you go there and you go with like a group of people, maybe like a co-founder and yourself or a group of three, and then you try to convince them that your idea is worth pursuing. So
Hmm.
again, this competition, that you have to prove that uh, the person who is giving you money believes in you, the idea that you can execute on it, and this goes into like a whole new kind of sector into like venture capital funding, right? They operate in a completely different set of like structures and rules, and in venture capital they need their money to be 100x in a few years, like maybe 10 years is a typical timeline, but they want to look for crazy, groundbreaking, out of the world ideas. So you
Yep.
have to show them that there is a big enough market for these kind of ideas so that they can take a bet on you. So
Right.
they are taking 100 bets and they know that 95 of them fail and the five of them succeed, and of the five, maybe three of them return the whole money, right?
Right.
The whole fund. So that's one way. If it's like another kind of if it's not a VC scalable business, but those are also, they have many small businesses, right? So you could, they might not be VC fundable, but still you could build something really quick. You could show some initial early traction and maybe get a SBA loan or do other things. But in our case, it's a venture fundable business, so we got venture capital early on. They invested in it when it was just an idea; it was nothing.
Yep.
So we showed them, like we talked to a lot of customers, and we showed them that there's this real pain that, and we are the right people to kind of go after this problem and solve it, and one day it will be huge. But
Awesome.
I think I don't know, it's a dichotomy in a sense that you have to show that it's a really big problem and ultimately it'll grow big,
Yep.
but you need to start in a very, 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 very narrow space early on because you can't solve a problem for 1,000 people out of the gate, right? It has
Right.
to be a problem for a very specific person in a very specific scenario.
Right.
If you do that successfully, you'll grow out of it into like a much broader audience.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah,
really interesting way to look at it.
yeah. So I feel like everything in entrepreneurship is a bit of a dichotomy in itself because, yeah, you need to show that you'll be big, but you need to start small and kind of really focus. And if you, yeah, in the early days, like all your focus should be on making at least like one customer really, really like your product.
Right.
Like committee, like design by committee will kill everything. Yeah, if you ask 10 people what's the best way to do it, yeah, it's a sure short way to not be successful.
Become depressed and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So, Madhav, if there's, if there was anybody listening to this that could help you in any way, what kind of resources are you looking for right now? Is there anything that you need help with, whether it be funding or whether it be manufacturing components or anything?
yeah. So yeah, we are actually currently fundraising and yeah, we're looking for potential investors, like either venture capital or angel investors. So if anyone is interested in building or like supporting two two founders building in the robotics and AI space, be down to have a conversation. And what I'll say is like we're at a very interesting point in robotics itself where costs have come down drastically, where it's much easier to build something now than it was maybe a few years ago. And
Right.
this kind of gets back to the discussion with China too. Like tariffs are changing every day as we speak, but ultimately the message remains that manufacturing in US is favorable now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we want to build a robotics kind of factory here in the US, and but initially we have customers who are ready to kind of try our solution and pilot it and test it. So that's what we want to do, and we are looking for people to kind of fund the business. So that's one ask.
Yeah.
The other ask is, yeah, we're looking for, if you're someone interested in robotics, automation, you're another founder in the area, I'd love to chat because we learn a lot from other founders, their mistakes, their wins, etc.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a brilliant idea. I think there's a huge market for it. It makes a lot of sense. You're filling a very much needed gap in the space, and yeah, I mean, I think there's a pretty hot chance you're going to be successful with it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, regardless of the endpoint, the journey, yeah, has been great, and hopefully it continues to be exciting for me.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for coming on, Madhav.
Yeah, thank you, Nate.